morning and good afternoon, good evening, wherever you guys are in parts of the world. Thank you so much for joining in the session with Varun Totem, um, more fondly known as Varun or Varun Anna to all of us here from Kuku. Uh, to us, so this session uh, is that an aircraft from your end?
See, we are very close to a airfield.
All right, okay.
So, so every 10 minutes you'll hear it out. Sorry.
Okay.
Can't be muted. Okay.
All right, okay.
Okay.
So,
Mm.
uh, so the session is dedicated to uh, Meenakshi Chandra uh, from Kuku, who has been writing a book on the works, stories, and life of Laurie Baker. So to us, that's one of the very, very prominent and important works that she has taken up to understand Baker more than an architect, understand Baker as Baker himself. So the book will be released in a few days or a few months soon. So to us, so the very first interaction of Varun to us was back in 2015 when Arun was there in Kuku to help us build the very first infrastructure of the school over there. So somebody has asked a few words about Kuku as well, please, and the organization. So Kuku means different things to different people, but there's one common connecting thread: is Kuku is a place of hope. Kuku is a place of joy. Kuku is situated in the foothills of Javadi uh, hills near Tiruvannamalai, about 40 kilometers from Tiruvannamalai, South India, in the state of Tamil Nadu. That's where Kuku is. So, uh, why is this conversation very important? And with so many students of architecture here, is because architecture today is is considered as a very fashionable profession or fashionable career option, not to call yourself an architect. But what after graduation? What do you really do, or what do you really mean uh, when you say that you are an architect? Is a very big question that all of us don't have answers to. So, but Varun, after graduating from the top institutions in the globe, uh, decides to work with the remotest villages of India and abroad. It's very fascinating as to why would somebody having a formal degree in architecture want to work with the villages, and to want to work with earth is something very, very different. I'm kind of very skeptical to use any words or terms here. The minute I say earth architecture, it has become another fashion statement saying, "Oh, earth architect. Oh, you guys are those eco-friendly guys. மரபு கட்டடக்கலை பண்ணீங்களா?" So those terms are become uh, have become some kind of a term that I dread to use these days. Sustainable architecture, eco-friendly architecture. We're all bombarded with those terms. But to me, Varun goes beyond all these terms. He does not really claim himself to be anywhere to be as an eco-friendly architect or sustainable architecture. None of his posts or none of his website, nowhere there is any word about all these things, and that's something that found me very, very fascinating. Though, because in a world where there is nothing done and so much about all this, there's somebody who does so much and does not really rant anything about it, and then keeps very calm and continues his work. So, and that's the reason why the session is very, very important to all of us. And Varun also brings a mixture of knowledge systems from across the globe through his extensive travel or his previous works in Mexico with his friends, workshops with students in different colleges of architecture, and so on. So he is not only a practicing architect, but also a mentor of, of earth architecture, if I may call so, to many people who have been inspired by him. So there are many people in Kuku, as who are a lot of many architecture students in Kuku who are inspired by his work, and Meenakshi and Aravind are two most prominent ones who have taken the path of earth architecture after meeting with Varun, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of students over here who will surely be inspired by the end of the talk and would want to explore uh, the earth architecture way. So there's a lot more to talk about, Varun, but I don't want to take so much of time. So I hand over to Varun to start the session. And thanks, Varun. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you, Kaushik. And I hope I'm audible. Am I good?
You are audible. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Kaushik, and thank you, Kuku. This is such a great honor and a joy to be connecting to so many people. I was just looking at the attendees, and it is like a family reunion of sorts of Kuku. Very beautiful memories come back of some of those 14 days to a month of associating with Kuku that transformed every life which participated there, including my own. And so I, anyway, this is a very emotional and a very touching time and event and group of people coming together for such a lovely purpose. So, not speaking much about the past, I would just like to touch upon a few ideas or topics which which have helped shape me, and I will be quoting each of my teachers who have directly or indirectly taught me these lessons in life, and that way I can recount some of these experiences with them. So, yeah, so life itself has been the biggest teacher, because as throughout my travels, I left home at the age of 17, and I tried to finance most of my life by myself throughout, and I'm 36 now. So, so leaving home and trying to go and excel in life was something we all associate with, and as students, it is sometimes even an expectation in the family. A traditional, conventional families that we've studied and we've got to become independent and all these strange ideas which propelled me into a very straight line, doing your bachelor's and then trying to work at a few companies and then trying to gain some experience. And again, going abroad became uh, a very kind of a required thing because everybody is doing it. And everybody is doing a master's. It kind of became the obvious thing to do. But while doing all of this and traveling from one country towards the other, uh, every time I was trying to become stable, which was what they used to tell me, this guy is going to become stable now. He has a stable job, kind of a question. Every time I was trying to become stable, I felt more instability inside. That comfort itself was feeling very discomforting. And I was always wondering, what's wrong? I mean, am I strange or is this something that is coming naturally? And this idea of stability was something that it became a habit that I started breaking. Every 6 months, every year, whenever I was becoming stable at a place, I was moving to another place. So, because of that, I started realizing that that there's a slow disconnect that has happened over the years with my own skins. So now the skins are a very important concept for architectural theory. talked by so many cultures, from our own Vedas beginning to the latest, practitioners. For example, Juhani Palasma talks about it. Charles Correa is talking about it, had written about it in his books. And basically, they explain that you don't have just one skin. There are a series that are each to culture and human existence. It starts with the inner skins within yourself to the outer skins, which is clothing, your own room, then your own house, then your courtyard, then your colony or your community, then a series of communities, the region, the state, and but other than that, there are also biological skins. The skin of the shade above you and around you, the skin of the birds flying above you, and the skin of the stars in the skies above. So the Brazilian Tucanos had a series of 9 skins, 4 above and 4 below. And we also have this depiction of skins in the form of, for example, an interpretation would be the form of our own chakras, no? And they do the mandala and they show 4 triangles and 5 triangles inverted and overlapping with each other. They also represent the same thing. So skin is basically something where you belong, where you're comfortable, where you feel alive, where you are whole, and you are free of any inner conflicts. And each skin is related to the other, and it gives us, it gives us a lot of resilience. It reduces the vulnerability. It gives a sense of security. So me being away from the family, away from my own culture and community, was making me skinless, was making me vulnerable to very simple threats. So there is a sense of isolation that comes, as well as a sense of vulnerability that comes. And it was also several concepts that I had against my own culture, a lot of conflicting ideas, and a lot of it also goes to the strong upbringing that we have in Orthodox families, that we dread our childhood, our schooling sometimes, and so all of that actually culminated into a kind of a point where you break and you crack, and you realize that no, this is not the way, and I have to make changes in life to rebuild my skins. I have to get back to the community. I have to get back to my culture. I have to get back to my family, and I have to have my own, space, my own home, and my own clothes. And all of these are related to each other. They form a part of a whole that actually gives us comfort. And many of my clients, or many of people who try and build a new house, the first thing I'm trying to analyze is that how intact are their skins. And that is the whole question, no? Because as you see now, man is Purusha, according to Charles Correa in his book as well. The Purusha is a constant, whereas the environment around the man is always changing. Well, I'll have to mute this every.
No, it's okay, Go ahead. You don't have to mute it. You can go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So, so Charles Correa is always saying this idea that man is constant and his environment is always changing, and because of that, the biggest preoccupation of man has been how to adapt to a constantly changing environment. And this pandemic is one of these typical examples where the environment suddenly changes and man has to adapt, right? And it is in this adaptivity or adaptation that these skins help a lot. When you have your skins intact, you are not so vulnerable to these changing environments, because the skins have an inherent memory of how to deal with most of these changing environments. Right? So you can very clearly see that most countries which do not, or most places which do not have these skins intact, or these skins have ruptured over the last few generations or even before, they have become the most vulnerable places to environmental change. And it's a very however developed you are, for me only development means the development of skins, and you're only developed as your skins are. Having money or having a house, an independent house, does not mean anything. It only means that you have probably discarded so many skins, and you have got this at the cost of all of them, no? Cost of friendships, cost of relationships, cost of your own life, and so on. So yeah, so John Jandai very clearly used to say this, no, that what, how are we such an intelligent species? And he said he wants to be like animals because the bird makes a nest in 1 or 2 days, a rat digs a hole in a night, but intelligent human beings spend 30 years to have a house, and that's wrong, is what he said. Because so we are always, going into a very strange circle of life, of taking loans and building into this fake economic system to actually have some of the very basic needs called shelter. So the idea of home actually changed when I visited Kuku. I will spend a few minutes on this because came to um, as I came to Kuku, the my own, it was Senthil Anna who introduced me and said you should come and come and look at something, and everything happened so quickly. It was such a, it's like love at first sight kind of a connect, and their overwhelming humility and humbleness, while being so wise and knowledgeable, was something that was, you just can't say anything. You just have to serve, no? You have to be a part of it. It is such a calling. And it was in that kind of space that everything happened so quickly. We tried and organized a workshop, thanks to Shruti and Jeremy back then, who really pulled together great effort in bringing more than 80 volunteers from all over the country. And Kuku themselves went through such a deep transformation within 3 weeks, where there was nothing, and then you have Peter and Stalin, all of them coming together to put together such a large infrastructure, a kitchen, some dormitory. And in all of this, what you notice is that humility continues, and they were able to do it because they have these, this bonding and this skins intact. So very strong, very powerful in their way of being, and being there in Tiruvannamalai, or being there near Kuku. So these volunteers were organized in 2 weeks, and 1 week was handled by me, and then some by Jeremy. And I don't know if I can share a screen somehow. You know how to
can.
with more. How do I do that?
1 minute. Okay, so to all the attendees who are on full screen, you guys will have to exit the full screen to see what Varun is sharing. And Varun, you will have a icon on your screen saying share screen on your PC or laptop.
It will be in more. No, it will be in start sharing.
Are you full? Yeah, start sharing. Yeah. Start sharing, and then you have to, yes, yeah.
Can you see these? Yeah.
Yes, we can.
So this is the site of Kuku, and how in the very first day we actually, had Peter Anna very poetically tell, what his visions were, and something very simple, not as simple as a octagon here that we have, a hexagon here that we have. And these are some very nice images of how very simple, rudimentary methods were used, just mud and bricks, whatever was available around. See, the initial idea was to just a second. Let me just go to, yeah, so that's Jeremy. They're building and starting off the last courses for a dome to come in. See, the whole idea was to just have people build with their own hands, and where no skill is available, one has to just embrace the beauty of irregularity, of non-conformity in design, and uh, and just have mud do its own very thing, which is be very far from perfect. Its perfectness and its suitability is only in its imperfectness, and this is what was essential in this whole building. So when you can see these, we just had the mud soaked, and we had local artisans put these bricks together, simply sun-dried bricks. It was not fired, and these bricks were passed around to a site and then dried, and then we were using them again. So this is the process of making simple bricks. All the children, many of their parents also participated in this process of making these bricks. Volunteers also helped in cooking. So this is basically how the camp was set up. You see, there are some tents and some huts set up, and volunteers were cooking, and that was how this whole building came about. Nice thick walls of simple sun-dried bricks were put together. No, so this is this structure coming up there. So in design, there is not much other than saying that we looked at minimizing the effects of human error. So human error was actually being celebrated here. When you build a building in such a way that it does not require skill, then it becomes cheaper, cost effective, more inclusive, more accessible to everybody. So it is a design idea. It is not a construction thing, that you have to design a building in such a way that it does not require skill to build. And that is how whole of Varnachal architecture is. No, people who build their houses in villages, they have not been trained. They have not built so many houses, but yet they are able to build perfectly into the patterns that are always available around them. And they're doing it for the first time, and it comes out to be so beautiful, so uniform, and it is so visible among the whole village. Everybody is building it in the same way. So it is a design element on how do you synthesize these ideas of of building, and building just happens when you have the right design in place. So you can see all of these walls that are very they're very irregular, jagged and rugged, but it is all it is strong, and it is built to last. No, uh, there that was the poster, and this is the big tree under which we would all gather. It was a very nice celebration in the beginning where all the school children came together, and each one had bought a small hand of soil, packed into a tied into a nice linen cloth with a message written on it. And it was so touching that all of us who were there from the outside, we were literally crying because of the overabundance of simple just love that was there from all these beautiful children there. And there's usually cuckoo poetry, which is so very deep. There's so many poets who are just talking in poetry and walking, and doing so much art around. Uh, Amish Anna is always there, teaching all these kids, and you can see how joyful this whole environment is. Uh, so that is basically the idea of how this happened. We built a mud dome in I think 10, 15 days, and a lot of mistakes and a lot of errors because I've always been learning how to do this, and it was a great opportunity. They have never even complained of all the problems and challenges that they've had. They just let it flow, received the love, and they've continued building that school. No? And it is a very spectacular, example of how to actually build. And building, I'm not meaning build a school or build a structure. It is how to build a community, how to build people around you, relationships, uh, how to build ideas, how to build love amongst people. So that is what Cuckoo actually has always stood for. It is more than just a simple building experience, no? So if you are able to stop sharing my screen there, okay. So that was the main idea that transformed my life completely. That you know, there's not much joy really building for a client, someone's home, because your efforts are never going to be paid for in its true value. And you're not dealing with a process of growth, but actually
Sorry, guys. He'll be back in a few minutes. If you guys have any questions till then, you guys can type it in the Qbari session and we'll be able to take the questions at the end of the session. All right, okay. Sorry, guys, you'll be seeing me doing some sign language mimicking. That is to Varun, not to you.
you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Getting worse. Okay. So yeah. So what? Sorry about that. So yeah, what Coco really meant is that, and there are a few important um, aspects about this, and I'd rather uh, tell you step by step. So one is that first important thing is that let's talk about architectural design itself. Is that if you look at any animal or any bird building its house, it has reduced the complexity of building, or it has increased the simplicity of building to a single assembly, single building assembly. Know what I mean? It does not have many components to it. So bird builds a nest. It is just a single unit. You know? Or if a rat digs a hole, it is a single unit. There is no different elements to it. Or if a bear makes a hole, a bird makes its own nest. It is a single unit. So we humans actually started architecture with that simplicity, just like animals. We used to build very simple structures, maximum one or two elements. Even now in the villages, you go and see the houses basically two standard elements in vernacular architecture. For example, the architecture of Burj, wherever you see, it is a series of walls and a roof. Sometimes it's just a roof and nothing else. So it is very simple. There are not many windows. There's not a foundation, and it is because of that that building actually becomes easy. It is not a very expensive, challenging process. It is always easy to master two techniques, and you don't have to hire anybody. You don't need extra experience because it is easy and it is reduced to something very simple. So learning from pattern language or the timeless way of building, even Alexander says that every building or any the act of building is actually the culmination of a very simple, repetitive process. The repetitive action. For example, the bee or the bird is actually just going and bringing a twig and weaving it into this nest. You know? Or a rat is just continuously doing this and making it whole. So it has mastered one exact repetitive movement. Yes. It and in pattern language they also say that this movement is very precise and specific, but it cannot be easily defined because it is very natural or intuitive. So even for human beings, this this act of building, just like the act of drinking water or the act of eating food or just the act of drinking milk from a mom, which comes so naturally, the act of building is also natural. And it is not very difficult if one is able to learn. What I mean by learning is that one is able to discover this simple act that is already within you.
Varun, sorry, 1 minute, sorry to interrupt. There's a lot of breeze. Is it from your end?
Maybe. Is it better?
Yeah, much better now.
Okay. My fan then.
Okay.
Yeah. So it is this act of building that I say that has to be repetitive. Then fourth aspect is that when you're designing with curves, the natural curves of human movement, the natural movement of the hand, natural movement of the legs, everything is always in a curve. And when you're integrating these curves into design, the amount of building drastically reduces, the strength of building drastically increases, the durability increases, the way the wind moves is more uniform. There are no abrupt changes. There is lesser accumulation of humidity and water. The sun is not directly hitting one face, but a curve which makes the building cooler because no single face is radiating heat during the day or the night. So building with curves is very natural to every natural thing. No? From leaves to plants to flowers to any species is actually building with only curves. So building and designing with curves is a very intuitive and innate process that we automatically have. If you look at a natural plasterer, he is using his hand, moving his hand in the curve. No, if we are looking at any kind of building activity in the vernacular sense, they're always using very organic shapes. It's all curves everywhere, very beautiful. So that is also very innate to design. No? Then also we are essentially a social being. We live in groups, which means we grow food in groups. We love in groups. We also eat in groups. We also build in groups. So the activity of building can't be something done by one person. It takes a community to build. Or the corollary of that idea is that the building activity is an opportunity to bring people together. So design of Cuckoo and the building of Cuckoo was in the whole process where it actually brought people together. So it is an opportunity to bring people together. That was what Cuckoo really showed and taught us. And if they are able to provide for food and hospitality, and someone is able to teach them or just guide them and help them rediscover what is already there within themselves, not teaching them anything new, just helping them. So the idea was to give people the freedom to build. People who were there in the Cuckoo workshop very well recognized that they would always look at me and ask me, is this right? I said, does it matter? You just build, connect with it. No? And that was the way to go. So the complexity of a building should be reduced. And the design principle, it's not a construction. If the mason is not able to do something that you have designed, it is not the mason's mistake. It is yours or it is mine for not being able to give something that is buildable. No? So that is another aspect. And when all these three are put together, I can hear some background noise. If all these three are put together, no, then all these ideas that we are all discussing, what is ecological, what is cost effective, what is durable, maintainable, and all, can be solved. Otherwise, we are only designing products, and products are bound to fail. They don't have any life. Nature immediately works upon them and dismantles it to its own taste. And nature's work is always a process. So if we are able to use nature's processes themselves to build a building, then we are in tune, just like how the bird is building its own nest. So building is a process. It's a process that is integrating all these aspects that I have kind of learned from Cuckoo itself. No? And this process is individual, unfortunately or fortunately, which means that every individual associates with this process in their own unique way from their own experiences. And the more a person is connected to themselves or to nature, the easier it is to learn this process, this personal process. And one sometimes needs a guru or a teacher to help themselves see this process, which is already there inside them. Something will come naturally to you. So society was organized basically by groups of people who were integrated into these personal and local processes, which is again a skin. You find a weaver's village or a potter's village. So this exposure to that innate possibility and skill of weaving, for example, is around you. And kids just naturally pick it up. Education is not a challenge. Learning is not a challenge. It does not come by force. It comes by choice. It comes with joy of doing it. And that is how artisanry actually developed around the world, because the skins were intact. It was a method that was easily buildable or learnable. It was something that gave very instant feedback and satisfaction. It was accepted. There were no inner conflicts. in the whole system. And that is how artisanry developed. So over the years, I've started realizing that finally life is all about these recurring events, and it is about waiting for these events to happen, because it is this only during these events that one actually lives. You know? Otherwise, we are just waiting for this time. So there was this story of anyway, forget the stories. The idea is to live, no, to actually live. Well, you know what I mean by actually living. That you are just unexpectedly smiling at yourself. There is no conflict inside. You're just peaceful. You're not fighting anything. You're not fighting anybody. You are yourself. And we are waiting for those moments all the time. We are preparing for those moments. Some people say, no, I'm saving up for retirement, you know, and I'm going to be peaceful when I retire. Not really. All of these events happen during our life. And Puku was one of those moments, one of those important big dots that happened that, you know, you just sit on a rock, you're sleeping in the night, and you're looking at the stars, and you just feel happy. You feel like you've connected with yourself finally. You feel at peace. So once that taste happened, it was like a drug, you know? That yeah, I want more of this. I want more of these events. I want it more frequently to be able to feel very peaceful, feel connected, and I can go to bed just smiling, laughing at myself. And that joy is very beautiful. And that led me somehow, in a way, to seek more of these events. And that beautifully brought me to the best teachers in the world. Uh, when I went back to Mexico, I was a changed person altogether. And everything else that did not make sense, which was an event that I could discard, I started discarding. And that started giving space for more events at a higher frequency, regular intervals that started, you know, helping me connect with this idea of being myself, just being without inner conflict. So every possible way, every possible opportunity that gave me joy started becoming a part of life. You know, whether it even if it involved building for free, even if it involved working with people who were not very interested, or teaching for a very small group of people. That's always still bringing me joy, because I was connecting with the material, I was connecting with myself and that process rather than anything else. No? So teaching, working on site, and trying to discard this idea of being an architect and being more of a helper, laborer, or a mason over time started taking form. Right. And this teachers who came along have taught me very, very deep ideas, especially a few that I can recall is Maestro Andres Flores, no, from Mexico City. And he had a very interesting idea as a master vault and dome builder. And what he used to say is that, Varun, uh, whatever we drink, we have to pee, or we have to let go. Whatever we eat also, we have to let go. Whatever we breathe, it has to come out. So we cannot be containers of anything. We are only a conductor of everything in this world. And most importantly, we are a conductor of knowledge. We are a conductor of experience. So whatever you're learning from me, after 3 years of apprenticing with him, that is what he said. Whatever you're learning from me, it will only multiply within you and outside if you share it. You cannot be a collector of knowledge, but you have to be more of a conductor of knowledge. And the more you share with people, the smoother this pipe that you are becomes, and you will start conducting even more knowledge. You will make space for more knowledge to come in. So you just can't hold on to this knowledge because it was never yours. You can't hold your breath because it is never yours, right? So that was a very important lesson. And I started focusing on teaching, ways of teaching. And that led to me to the research on didactics and how knowledge is actually being transferred. So my central research over the years became observing these artisans and how they are communicating this art with their shishyas or apprentices or with people. Because working with a weaver here in Anantapur very recently, you see that he's not using words at all. Even Andres Flores does not use words. And you know, there is no eloquency, there is nothing involved there. Andres, if you observe, it is there, it is easy, you will be able to do it. And that is such a beautiful concept because the lack of words, the lack of tools makes the building process universal. It is beyond the barriers of language, beyond the barriers of age, gender, skill, experience. In fact, the more blank a person you are and the more ready you are to receive, the faster you learn. And that is what I started experiencing when I started working with masons or with any modern architect who comes with a set of understanding, set of skills, or a set of, I don't know, a series of egos. It is very hard for them to pick up something. Whereas a child or anyone who's just coming in to build with a clean slate is excelling it within a day or two. So that is a very powerful learning that, I mean, it is very similar. For example, you've seen any foreigner and you give them a roti with some curry. What they will do is they'll put the curry in the center of the roti, they will roll it up and eat it like a taco. No? So there is some weird conditioning that has happened. Whereas a child here will look at the mother and he will try the normal method of eating roti. So that's the whole thing. No? A mason is always using his own way of building. It might work for him, but it is not open to these natural processes that are probably there inside him. No? So that comes to education altogether. And why education? Why does one need to spend time going to school and doing all of this when it is exactly just teaching us all the ways how to disconnect from ourselves? And not, it is creating these barriers to learn. I mean, you don't need to learn language to learn a skill. That is one of the biggest revelations. You don't need to be eloquent and talk about all of this to learn a skill. You just have to learn a skill. And it doesn't take too long. So Claude Alvarez in Cuckoo's series itself was touching upon all these points. That we have become intellectual bums and we are sitting on the chair and just talking and we are only educating our children from our shoulder and above. Language is not important. In fact, words, the more eloquent you become, the more complicated a person you are because you are trying to use words to form some real jazz in the mind. Whereas when I go and build and hold a brick or hold a trowel or just mixing mud, there are no words. Things are just flowing in the mind. And there are feelings, there is ideas, there is love with other people, which is just flowing. They are the essentials of life, which is actually required for building. And finally, all of this comes down to simpler ideas of living. And as recently introduced by Namrata, a reading by Martin Heidegger, who is also criticizing the same, that we have put too much importance on words, and the meaning of words itself have changed, and we are putting others at fault because they have uttered some words, and the whole thought behind action is not being seen. And people say, I'm offended because you said this. So the silliest thing to say. You are so easily offended with mere words. and being really is that, no? And that you are able to be in sync with the skies and with the angels of the souls around you, the nature, earth, and the air, and you're able to be there in unity in that same central place all the time. And Heidegger very clearly says this, that more centered you are, or the more you are being as a human being, the better you can live, no? And what he says in two corollaries very simply is that you can only build what you are capable of living, and you are only living what you are capable of building. So the building you live in, or the space that you live in, it's one of those skins that we are trying to build. Right? And most of us have already been locked into a set of rooms, a boundary wall, a few roads, which is very clearly reinforcing the idea of this is my skin right now. And are you happy? Do you deserve something better? Can you be someone better? And what is it that you need to do to, be something else? Or can you then become capable of, or can we become capable of building something better? So that living and being is very much together. And so when someone comes to me to build their house, ask me to build their house, I try and get into their feet and try to understand what are they as a being, and what is it and how far they can go uh, in terms of living in a house, and how ecological or whatever, all these words that we say, how connected they can be with the skies and the earth and the neighbors. And that is what defines what building that they will get. We try to push them to be a better being, but it will not be enough. They will immediately modify it to their own very needs. And building is anyway not a product, it is a process. It is just like how you're changing your clothes, you're changing the way your building works, and building should be built that way. That people, if at least you're building for them, don't give them something fixed, because they might become better beings. And when they become better beings over time, they should be able to change the way they live as well, or their building as well. So we are surrounded by ideas about a home that is a product and it is an end, but it is really the start of a new life, no? And that building should motivate you to become a better being, and then you should modify the building so that it will enable you to become a better being. And that is how that regenerative process of living and building happens. So I'd like to just end this and say that I feel very privileged, very, very privileged that I've come back here to India, and I'm from this place where so many of the skins are very much intact. All we need to do is embrace it. We all have villages. We all have people who are living in these villages. The whole idea of a migrant worker would not happen if we were providing, a local economy within a village from where we all are. The whole idea of moving materials would not happen. Packaging food would not happen. Bringing water and sewage would not happen if we just go back and live in our roots. So my process of my coming back to India was to initiate this regrowing of my skin, try to get close to my father and mother, my own family, which I had left 17 years ago. Try to know my own house, look at the plants around me. Can I garden a bit? You know, can I wear a better set of clothes? Can I get a pattern in life? Whereas where the life is becoming a series of recurring events which are giving me joy. And can I intensify those patterns? Can I make my life regenerative? Has been a big process. And India is blessed with examples of of ways of life where you can be as a human being. It also has a number of teachers. It has a number of set patterns. It has a number of learning processes. It has a number of skills and examples, which are very fastly, very, very quickly dying out. But it is up to our generation to pick them up and learn from them. No, we might not get back to that perfect circle of life, from grandmother to mother to child, and we might not get back to that beauty of that circle of life because we've been thrown into a straight line. Paul Klee's painting. So we have, you know, we can try. We can try to get back there slowly, and even the effort of doing so is a valuable learning and a valuable education to our children. We don't have to really give them any foreign education. The capacity to teach them is there within us, just like the capacity to build or eat or make love. So if we are setting those examples, if we are yearning to get back and grow those skins, they definitely will have a better chance and a better life, no? And they will be developed if development is growing of skins. So that is, I think that is it. I would rather receive more questions now from everybody. And before doing that, I just say a very big thanks to all my teachers again. It started with Professor Shankar in IIT Roorkee, who taught me the meaning of, the importance of being humble and simple and working hard. Chitra Vishwanath ma'am in Bangalore, who showed me how big a fool I am and how bad I would be if I would really do architecture, which shook me that I was really no good, and all that ego of coming from a premier institute was just shed to pieces. Professor Vikram Bhatt at McGill University in Montreal, who even being in such a university, showed me how the power of implementing simple ideas can be very, very powerful. And it is not the complex ideas that make are of value. It is a re-implementation of simple, proven ideas that gives a lot of strength. Then there is Dr. Ramon from Mexico, another vaulted dome builder, who showed me how important it is to have the skin of a network of very good friends and talk to them regularly and invest in them and look at mutual growth and not individual growth. He mentored me as a child. He's so many years more elder to me. Andres Flores, James Anthony taught me how important it is to just simply work hard, not think. Just be at it, enjoy, go take a drink some mezcal in between lifting to a few breaks, play some good music, get a rhythm, and keep at it. There's not much thought that is required. Just enjoy. Just watching him gives you that motivation that, and I can do this as well. And there is joy. Just working with him for a few days gives you the power of working, where you feel your own sweat, you feel your body moving, you feel your mind soothing, you feel the sun, the wind, you enjoy those moments just working there on site. I'm pretty sure all farmers, artisans, and builders know what I'm talking about when they're working on site. And finally, my own parents, who, however accomplished they have always been humble. They've been very, very humble. No need of riches, no need of, displaying wealth or any of that. Somehow, while they have pushed me towards a great education and whatnot, they have given me this joy by themselves, living in such a beautiful environment. A small, whatever, not a small, big mud home that we built in 2009 together with our own hands almost. And thank all of these people to actually help me through this ongoing process, and they're a part of it. And keep them as my own skin very close to me because they are the ones who are protecting me all the time. I can always go back to them and ask. So this idea of sponging that Claude Alvarez was talking about, Dr. Claude was talking about a few days ago, is basically that how can you sponge out of your families and parents and your friends? And that is basically use of your own skin. No? He puts it in a very eloquent and you know uh, funny way. I'm not getting that a kind of eloquence yet. But then, yes, it is about sponging your skins and living through them. No? So thank you again, and I'm going to open myself to questions right now.
Thanks, Varun. Thank you so much for that and beautiful words and inspiration words. And you kind of got a mixed audience here from different parts of the globe and students, professors, practitioners, and so on. So my first apologies that I would not be able to take all the questions in the given period of time,
Yes.
but I will take as much as possible.
Okay.
So the very first question is, what was Varun uh, as a student? Back in IIT Roorkee during your initial days, uh, what was he like? When did you start talking this language? I'm sure that you didn't start this language when you were in day one or day two. It could have grown gradually into you. What were the different, other than your professors that you have mentioned, what are the different incidents or different tools or practices that have helped you evolve into being who you are today and to speak the language that you're speaking today?
My friends used to always tell me that I'm the most curious person they have seen, that I'm curious about everything. I'm willing to try my hand at everything possible. And it does not mean being easily distracted. It means genuinely being curious about what it is and how it works. And I did not pick up architecture by choice, by the way. It was, I had a very bad JEE rank, and my father said, you have to become he's a physicist, a very famous physicist. And I thought I'll become a physicist, and IIT is a great place to study physics. Then my JEE rank was so bad the first time that I did not get anything. Then I had to study one extra year. And I was not in the toppers. I was a mediocre student throughout. A very typical mediocre student. Even at the IITs, I was a mediocre student throughout. And there were some subjects where I excelled and some where I didn't. But where I excelled, it was mainly because of my curiosity, right? So, and it obviously came at the cost of other subjects. It was not at all where I just discarded them. It's in this very competitive world. So much information is just being thrown at you. You have to be a sieve. You have to be like the sieve that we use in sieving mud, where we only take the glue below. The clay comes out the bottom, and we only want the glue that puts things together. And whatever that is there inside you, you want to put it together and create a web. And you want to grow vertically and horizontally at the same time. So, yeah, I was a mediocre student, and it is only this curiosity, I think, and a very childlike curiosity. I still do it. Someone is trying to teach me how to grow sprouts recently. Okay, let's do it. Let us do three different ways of making sprouts that is written in the web or bee touching. Which one is working locally better? Like an experiment. One worked very nicely. Simple, take a cotton cloth and we did it. And yes, now we can grow sprouts. No vegetables in pandemic, no problem. Take green gram dal, chana dal, make sprouts.
Okay. So a lot of questions from students and uh, young practitioners who just started as to how does someone What the two three questions mixing together. How does someone start building with natural materials in an urban areas? Uh, and if someone wants to start building, where do they start with? Like, what would be their point of starting to for them to get acquainted with uh, natural materials as such? Ask
Why?
questions.
The question sounds as though it is such a difficult thing to do. If you mix some mud, then you can start by making an oven and your setbacks, 3 feet by 3 feet setback, and start making tandoor naan at home. It's a simple start. And it is not difficult. You can do it in a day. And it comes very naturally. Even children, you just tell your children, show them a photograph. If you don't want to do, show them a photograph. This is what I want, and show them, give them some mud and water. They will mix the mud and water, and they'll start molding it. It's very simple. And somewhere you start. Once you get the taste of it, you start doing it, and it is one of the easiest things to learn. It is so much more easier because you don't need a tool. You don't need some chemical. You don't need to buy anything. You just dig whatever soil is there and water, mix it. And if you don't want to do that, wait for the season. You look at the birds just after the rains, they're in a frenzy to start a family because of twigs are there. There is abundance of twigs. There's a lot of wet soil. They just start using it immediately and start building their nests. No? So building also has certain patterns. We can't just start randomly building during the rains or the peak of summer when there is no water. There are specific moments to start, which is just natural. And the building is at its own comfort when you're doing it because it is just right. Just like how you sow a crop. There is a certain time to do it. You recognize that, try to understand that, and then do it. It is a specific time for specific processes. No, pottery, weaving, firing of a break, or using thatch, or using mud. Every process has its own timing. And it is integrated with the web of life as well. So in a city, it becomes difficult because we are not even able to observe these things, nor are we able to get these things, at hand. So if you want to accelerate in permaculture terms, you want it to be quick succession, then you have to go to a place where you are a different person, no? Or you're yourself, what I mean. So go to a village, go to Kuku, for example, go volunteer there. And you will understand very easily how simple it is to do all of that. You just live in their building, see how they are doing the beds and their construction. It's a beautiful brewing place for all natural builders. Beautiful, spectacular. One of the best examples. Not even Auroville matches that humility and class that Kuku does.
All right. So the question is, how do you your experiences from Mexico? How have you related that to the Indian context, if you have? And what are your learnings from Mexico that you have got back to India? The question is from Divya Mallavarapu, if I pronounce your name right, Divya, sorry.
Yes.
Divya is better, yeah.
Divya, okay. Childhood friend. Divya. So uh, see, Mexico is just another India, literally. In fact, anywhere in the world you go, other than the developed world, it is just another India. It's the same culture everywhere. The same culture of living with the family, valuing your own traditions, using whatever is local around you, and being respectful to your own body, taking care of your health, not looking for lavishness. This is a culture. This is a world culture which has been handed down since so many generations, and so many places around the world. So in Mexico, when I started, the real building with my hands and being a contractor happened in Mexico. I was mainly hiring contractors when I was here in India. There I became a contractor myself, which means I was on site for 5-6 months straight. And I was depending on my own volunteers and masons. And living with this mason, one specific mason, one helper, he, Antonio was a helper on site, and he was earning 1,200 pesos a week. It's about 4,000-5,000 rupees a week. This is nothing. This is typical Mason rate. And he invited to one of his child's, how do you say, baptism, bautismo. They tonsure their head. It's like a namkarna kind of a thing. When I went there, I got to know that he has 7 children, and he's maintaining 7 children with that and a family, being the sole breadwinner with this meager salary, and he's the happiest person I have seen. So how he is able to do it and how he is able to do all those roles, because he has a very strong, skin. Fair series of skins. His community is there. His family, his brothers, they're all working together in maintaining the cows and all. That reminded me, yeah, this is there in India. Like, I'm searching for this joy everywhere around the world, and it is right there. If I go back to the village and if I become a villager, I have this. Like, what any amount of education or development or achievements or awards is not going to give me this joy, this genuine joy that he has of a balanced life. So that is one. And the second is the idea of being a Mason clicked in Mexico. And working with my hands and being able to work with my hands worked. Because when I went there, I did not know the language. And I was very bad at negotiating with Masons, local Masons. They would usually rip me off. Then I decided that let us re-implement this cuckoo idea, that let us publish a poster and get volunteers on site. Then I got Anna helped me in it, and I got about 50 or 40 volunteers who worked for 2 months. And then out of those, 5 people stayed on with me and worked for 4 years. Paulino is one of them. And we built so much thanks to that one workshop. A Mason would have typically left me and gone. And this is what would happen in India, no? So I stopped training Masons altogether. There is no point. So you train a Mason, you invest in them, and then they would learn and they would leave. They're just there for a wage. So you teach interns, teach architects, teach educated people who are trying to get back to this circle of life. And that is a huge number, the big resource that we have. And India is perfect because we have that resource in abundance. So this is perfect. Yes.
This question is from a student of architecture, Krishna Priya. I'm reading out the question to you. No two sites on earth are alike. No two buildings have the same purpose. The purpose, the site, the material determine everything. If then, how to inculcate this instinct to understand, realize, and practice this energy?
It's not taught, man. It is enabled. That's all. As parents, it is not. If there's an enabling environment where someone can just try and connect, not even motivation, just enabling. Lack of obstruction in the process of learning, in creative learning and experimentation, or in observation. That is all. And you cannot reinvent the whole of vernacular architecture by yourself. Just observe. You sketch, you draw. And architecture school is a farce. Might as well buy 100 sketching books, some pencils, a cycle, and just go start sketching and working with villagers for 5 years, and you'll be the best architect ever. You'll get a picture if required over time. So this learning itself is not from the outside. It comes only from inside. Yeah. Sorry, I'm being very vague for that answer. But if you want to specifically learn something, then we can, whatever I can teach. But more importantly, find one Anna, or one Akka who can actually teach you an essential skill that she's or he is, very proficient at, as someone that they've been doing for such a long time. Just make friendship with them. You'll not only learn a skill, but you'll learn so much more, about their life and their own other skins and whatnot. And while learning that, you will make it your own. You will become a part of it. So that is a way of learning. Yes.
So, so I'm going to kind of take forward the question a bit. So the idea is also that we talk a lot uh, about connection, about energy, about happening, about becoming. Uh, but none of this is kind of taught in any school of architecture. Whichever university that you go to, nobody talks about this aspect of architecture at all, be it any premier institution. But most uh, architects or most people who understand this, and to me, most people whoever is there in the conversation, group conversations, or people who talk the same language and who understand the same thing. Bindu Malini was talking exactly the same thing that you are talking right now. She's a musician, you are an architect, and uh, I don't find a big difference there. But how does someone what are the tools or practices for someone to start to get initiated into this? Everybody would have different kind of experiences. I understand that it is not the same for all. Everybody will have varied set of experiences through different means. I'm asking, what are the means or what are the paths that someone should try to get started with this process?
See,
I think the question was much more vaguer than the previous one.
no. See, the processes. There are certain processes. Definitely, there are some easy tools that we can adapt, because we are all coming from the same set of you know education systems. We are all products of the same disease. So we are yet to recover from that disease, and that unlearning is still going on. So there are certain remedies, definitely, for that disease to go out very quickly. One would be chaos and depression, obviously, because you would rethink everything. Then would come some kind of spirituality, meditation, and yoga, which will help you, whatever, centered. Then would come some intellectual growth through maybe some permaculture course, or reading something about the natural way of living, uh, reading some books by some great masters. But more importantly, in all of this is surrendering, no? Surrendering to that chaos and let things flow. Let things flow and just get involved. Get involved. Don't fight it. Get involved. Anything that you do with education will teach you that. And you don't have to do 101 different things. Just a few basic things. Just how to breathe, how to eat, how to drink, how to love, how to build. Roti kapda makan. Get that straight first. Focus on that. It will fall in place once these are there. Yes, yes.
Okay. So we have uh, Devesh here with us. So Devesh is a student of architecture before, and now he is a practicing architect who works with Varun, if I may say so. So, so I think it would be nicer to Devesh to share a few words about his experiences uh, when he started as a student of architecture and the transformation that he went through, and his experiences of working and traveling with Varun. Devesh, you're on.
Hello.
Yes, yes, you're audible, Devesh. Go ahead.
Maybe. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. My I've been work.
Devesh, your mic needs to be a bit more closer. Your audio is very feeble.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
am I audible?
Yes, yeah.
So I've been working with Varun's I learned how simple the whole process of architecture building is. And I realized like my year and 1 year of experience after college that taught me how simple it is. Everyone is this movie called Ratatouille, animation movie where a small rat learns how to become a chef in France. That's how I felt like it's a job.
Devish, your
Everyone,
signal is also breaking, Devish. Could you move to a
oh,
place where there's better signal if you're on your phone? Your
yeah,
voice,
yeah, yeah,
your voice is breaking. Yeah.
yeah. Hello.
Yes, now it's better. Yeah, you can go over it from again from the beginning. Yeah.
No, my experience was taught the people taught how to
Devish, you're still
how
breaking, Devish. Your voice is still breaking for all of us. Okay, Devish, why don't we do one thing? Why don't you just type your experiences in the Qbari and I'll read it out to them? I think that'll be better because if the voice is breaking too much.
okay, 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 no
Okay,
problem.
that'll be better. Yeah, all right. Thanks, Devish. Yes. So, mm, okay, so there is this question that's I'm kind of combining two three questions together here. So the question is once when you say you go back to your roots and then you also talk about skill sets that is there. You say very any traditional skill set that you take, very basic like making of lime or slaking of lime, anything. uh, by the time you really want to understand and to learn the process of a traditional skill, the skill set is almost extinct. The skill set is almost lost by the time you actually want to go back there. Then the question is, how do you really bridge this gap of wanting to go back to the roots, but at the same time keeping the skill sets alive? Traditional crafts or traditional craftsmanship or the material knowledge alive is the question.
It's so easy. The whole thing is so easy. It is traditional knowledge because it is easy. If it was difficult to do, it would have died out, no? So it is easy to learn. It is easy to pass on. It is easy to practice. It is easy to implement. Easy to teach. So it is one of the easiest things you can do. You are doing so much more complex things in life. So all it takes is the first permaculture principle: observe. Just observe. Try it by yourself. You will know it is easy. It doesn't take too much. And all these skills that we are so much hyped out, no? Like, oh my God, there's a lime plastering or some weaving or this. You try it, I say. You try it, you see it's so simple. And it does not take too much time. And you will evolve your own style, your own taste, your own methods over time. Because it is all the same thing. It is a weaving of life. It is weaving of things that are around you. Everything is the same. In fact, everything is the same. It's a weave of different threads that is so easily available. Nothing difficult about it. Yeah. And people are complicating it beyond doubt by writing about it, giving recipes, giving specific instructions. No, this is how it should be, how this should not, it should be. Bullshit. Everything is possible around below the sun, and there are a million variances of it, million nuances of it. There is no recipe at all. The only way is observe, try it out. It will work for you with the set of threads that is there around you. Weave them first, and it will be easy. If you want to say, no, I will get lime from Rajasthan, I will get soil from Auroville, I will get water from some other place, what nonsense. You're just doing a one-time experiment based on some book or some teacher who has taught you a specific recipe. There are a lot of teachers doing very specific, very rigid, strong ideas. No, this is how it should be and should not be any other way. You're not learning anything. In fact, they are the ones who are actually harming this whole movement of going back to the land by making it so complex. Even in our vault and dome workshops, people come without any, skill or knowledge. They're able to put up a roof in 5 days. Many of you are here in my own group in this. Many of them are here, and it is easy. It's no rocket skill, and I haven't really taught them any technique. The whole thing. Because when you observe me building, I have learned something. Some halfway I have gone. You'll observe me building and you'll be able to do it. You want to excel at it, keep practicing. You want a better example, go to Andres, my own teacher, or go to some artisan master who is going to die out in the next 30, 40 years. Here's your opportunity. Their children are not learning from them. The whole tragedy is that permaculture says we have to observe. We will not have the opportunity to even observe in a few decades because it would have all died out. Anyway, if observation is there enough as an example, no? And not observe means not read a book. Reading a book is a huge dilution of this simplicity. It is only making it more complex. Any book on natural building, any book. So forget the books. Go to an artisan. Yes.
Right. So the other question I think should be an architect or a student of architecture. So the question is very specific to the design process that you follow on site or with a client. So the question is it does it follow a common strand across different sites, materials, and context, or do you have a very basic principle that guides you in the process of design itself? That's the
Yeah.
question.
Good question. This is specific, but I'll make it as vague as possible. My answer is that there is no process of design. The process of design, the process of observation, the process of construction, the process of bringing people together is all integrated. It is one single process. And you have to get to it as close as possible to be able to execute this or continue this process. And these processes should not be in conflict with each other at any point of time, you see, including the natural processes of climate and materials available and all of that. So, how do you get to this core principle in architecture, or even in pattern language, they say, no, the quality or the timeless way of building. How do you get to that? There are different ways to it. Each specific site has different features, different indicators, different accumulators, which help you identify what process or guide you through this process. And we don't go in with any set ideas. We are only trying to observe and integrate all processes available. You have a local mason available, you have a local weaver, potter available, or you have a local tree that is giving you a specific wine in abundance. You have a local, I don't know, some kind of a weed that you can use in construction. All of these are natural processes. Your client does not have money. It is a process. The client has too many contacts around them who can help them, or, that is a process. So all of this is the story of Cuckoo, how they can do so much with so little. And it doesn't have to be anything. It is there physically that they're showing the way out. The design of Cuckoo was nothing. It took 3 hours or 2 hours. We remember very well. All the processes were there. Like when Peter Anna was there and talking, he didn't talk about design requirements. He didn't. He just explained what all processes are there around it. See, there is this bamboo here. Sand will come in this time. We can bring volunteers like this. This is the money we have. There is this mason around. There are these animals here. There is this flat land. Shade is here. He just explained these. And it was obvious. We just have to weave them together. That's all. Okay.
So the question is from a very a lot of questions from very young graduates, just graduated school. Um, the question is, we kind of understand what you are saying, or we are trying to understand what you are trying to tell us. So, first is thanks for that, and thank you for the inspirational session and getting us to know all these things. But on the other hand, practically, uh, when I want to work uh, with firms that are very, very grounded and rooted, uh, even though I want to work, my family and my society does not kind of let me uh, or agree to the idea of working, because they kind of see the other friends and batchmates working in corporates and doing a lot of other things.
Mm-hmm.
So did you face a similar situation, or what do you suggest us to deal with? How do we explain ourselves to them is the question.
See, Cloud sir had already answered this question, no? And he said that make them understand, man. It is not happen. It will not happen through love. I mean, so it will not happen through conflict or by rebellion. No, it will only happen through love. So it is not even about the language. Everyone who loves you only wants your happiness. So if you are able to demonstrate, by using the word demonstrate, that you are genuinely happy doing something, and they can see that happiness in your eyes, they can see you toiling. I think words are not required, no, to convince somebody. So it happened for me also. Like the challenges I had to go through to build this house for them, fresh graduates, no. We built this house out of Ramdal, wherever we are, and it was not easy. Obviously, my father is taking a 10-year loan to build a house, and all his savings, pension, everything is at stake. And you think he'll allow me to build an experimental house with mud? And we've lived in cities all throughout our life, no? And it was not easy, but it took some toiling on site. And when I made the first 2 or 3 walls by myself, no help, nothing, I just went to site and did it. And then when they came and they saw, and they felt it, and they hit it, and they understood that it's okay, it's not that bad. And I had given them some conditions as well. That's like, listen, if you want me to build this house, I'm building it out of mud. Otherwise, I'm not building. Hire some local contractor and get it done. Done. We have so many civil engineers in the family, from the rational sort of life. People working from PWD and all. They give you some plan. This is what happened here. No? I was not able to design this house myself. My uncle and some Vastu experts together, they defined the plan for this house. So very little room was given to actually demonstrate as well. And whole question, when are you going to be stable? Will you ever get married? All these questions. Who will choose you? All these useless questions, typical ones. Who will work with you? Want to be a mason? All of these questions have been there. It still are. If it is not my parents, it is other people's words going into my parents' ears and they're reacting to it. It just happens. But then over the years, in this fight I've enjoyed this process of just doing it myself and not paying attention to them. That they have also kind of soothed over the time. And now, over 10 years, we are actually enjoying this. It was not like that initially. All complaints, hey, too much, some termites have come here, what should we do? And, there are some cracks here happening, is this going to collapse? All of that, slowly those questions came to peace, over time. But no, I still face it. In fact, I've lost a lot of friends, a lot of relationships, a lot of sacrifices happened to just stick to this, to stick to this process. because society is always trying to integrate you into their horribleness, and we cannot live away from them. And just running away and going and living in the village is not a solution, because we are from this society. We have been educated in this society. We cannot just shed that skin, no. So we have to sponge the goodness. That's what Cloud Sir was also saying. Sponge it out, and only with love that we can sponge out of them. Being true, no? When we are true to ourselves and really trying something, it's only a matter of time. Only a matter of time. Yeah.
So Devesh has sent us, Devesh, who's working with Varun right now, has sent a message saying, apologies for my bad mic. I have been working with Varun sir since Jan. He has showed me how simple this process of construction is if we keep it simple. It took me more time to unlearn and learn every day. So I unlearned a lot every day to make every day of my experiences, to make every day of my experience like a child. So thanks to him and his process. He is a teacher and a student, and I am learning the same. To learn every day and share without worrying. Thank you. Thanks, Devish. Thanks for sharing. Um, so the question is whether a lot of young faculty here in colleges. So the question from them is, how do we incorporate this kind of a value system that you're talking about into the conventional mainstream education? Even when you do a 1 day workshop or a 2 day workshop of mud in colleges, it just ends up as a workshop. It does not really go beyond it to kind of question their consciousness. How do you what do you suggest to get the idea into the consciousness of the students?
See, unfortunately, the bodies that are regulating our architectural system are very rigged. They allow very little freedom for such events. I was already talking about events in my talk. That it is the frequent recurring moments or events that make us alive. The rest of the time is just waiting for those events to happen. So the whole education system, forget architecture, the whole education system has is hell-bound on reducing those, where people feel alive. It is in fact a whole process of numbing the opportunities and the senses to those events by following a strict paradigm and the syllabus that has to be covered and whatnot. No? And more, I feel and I see students around me who are so disconnected that simple thoughts are not getting into their head. Simple ways of design are not possible. So in the system, I have been a faculty at this School of Architecture in Mysore. I saw the same challenges. There's nothing new, and I couldn't continue there because the while the environment for being alive is still there, it must be there in many architecture colleges. The opportunities aren't, and the people are just forced to read a text and follow a line. So, if in our design projects, in our teaching methods, if we are able to teach the simple things first and just focus on the simple things, that is enough. And there is no need to complicate architecture. I mean, there are all subjects. It's just a framework. And somehow, as teachers, we should take the responsibility of simplifying it. There is a textbook and it is giving you certain guidelines, and there's an exam that has to be written. But if there is a sufficient force, a sufficient movement from teachers and students alike, that we can simplify the syllabus to the simple things, then I think the architectural bodies of education will also have to change. And it becomes even more important now in such a pandemic where the whole education system is being questioned. Schools are, the purpose of schools is being questioned. Learning systems are being questioned. Everything is perfectly being questioned so that there is an opportunity for us to observe ourselves and fall in place. And architecture is not going to be the same. Definitely. It was, we were waiting for this to happen. I mean, all of us knew, because we already knew from many years that what we are doing is wrong, but there's nothing we can do about it, right? And when this happened, this was, it's a hona hi tha. That's going to happen someday or the other. And the same thing is about architectural education. So, like, we all know from so many years that what has been prescribed by the regulatory body is not relevant. But we have not been doing anything about it. Just like how the monetary system is not relevant, or the food is not relevant, or the water is not relevant. Everything is not relevant really. So the more we make things relevant to ourselves, really relevant, that is this Purusha trying to harmonize with the environment, the better. So it is up to us only as teachers, and we are not meant to teach. We are meant to enable learning. And we don't want children to become hard disks who store information. We want to make them better processors such that they can process the information available around them. Okay.
Thanks. So we are nearing the end of the session. We have last 10 minutes, so I thought I can share a few pictures. Yeah, so
Yeah.
this is the initial beginning of the do. Date says 11th September 2015, about 5 years ago from today's date. So that's how it started. It's going on. So each of this has a story behind as to where this niche came from, where this style came from, how did each of this come and reach Kuku. Each of the elements and materials have a story to say in Kuku. So this is, I think, about 2 years ago when. So we had a actual uh, live Kuku conversation with Varun, not the virtual one, but a real one, physically. I mean, where there were students of architecture there and a few more people from Kuku also there. So that's architect Vishnu Priya, who was in Kuku Diaries. So that's Varun and Peter Anna. So Varun also mentioned Peter Anna. So Peter Anna's is the kind of the soul, SOUL and SOLE designer of Kuku. So his kind of his thoughts and his visions uh, that that go beyond the realms of physical plane that Kuku is formed. Uh, that we kind of don't understand what he is talking most of the time, or why he is asking us to do things. But there's only one thing that he usually says, that Kuku does not really need uh, an intellectual dialogue at all. What Kuku needs is just laymen who are able to do the job, and that's exactly the same thing that Varun is also saying. We just need people to be like kids, to come there and enjoy the process and then do it. So Varun has been talking about one personality, which is his dad over here. So that's Varun's dad, who has also joined the session. So great thanks to Varun and his family for being there. And this is Sendilana. So Sendilana was the one who has introduced Varun to Kuku, starting from the very initial days. So thanks Sandalana if you're here on the session. So thank you so much for introducing Varun to us. Yes, I think that's a small, I know what, a small memento that we are giving to Varun, which has been just uh, made with the things that are available on site. That's Muthu, that's Vinayagam, and that's Party to all of us, who is the Annadata for all of us, and who makes sure that everybody in Kuku is fed whatever time you go to Kuku. That's Varun's mom and dad, and Varun himself. And that's the doom of Kuku. So that's a part picture of the doom and Kuku. The very first picture that you saw, if you remember, that's the completed version from the inside of the same space. And that's the Zen garden, uh, conceptualized by Viprana again. That's an infinite loop of a garden where people will go around and plant seeds and plant trees. That's the group of people who were there during the session, and most of them have been inspired uh, from Varun's session that day and have taken the earth path of doing things. That's Meenakshi Chandra, who is right now writing the book on Laurie Baker, who has taken virtual. Arvind is here. Uh, this is Lokesh, student of architecture. This is Raji, also student, and I also see a few more faces, but I don't remember their names. Sorry for that.
Ramesh and
Yeah, Ramesh and all the people from Kuku, I remember, but the other students who had joined from outside, I don't remember, but most of them have taken to build or try to build with Earth in different things. That's Ramesh, that's Podmani, Aarti, Arun, Kumaran, Tirumalai, Muthu, Nason, and a lot more people. That's Sivarajana standing in the center. His face is not very clearly seen. That's Sivarajana standing in the center there. So, yeah. And that's the one of the most pictures that I always like. That's the Purusha and the environment that he is admiring at work. So this is one of my most favorite pictures of Varun. That kind of shows a very deep sense of connect to the work we're doing. I don't think uh, any architect who is building goes and smells the concrete or the brick wall that one is building. But earth, it is possible to to get the smell and the feel and the texture of earth that is there. So thanks, so it's for sharing the green. So the one most important aspect as to how so after building all these things, whatever experiences that Varun had shared of working with a lot of volunteers in school and whatever stories that happened during that 1 month in school. A few months later, uh, the beginning of the school was there. The formal uh, mm, opening ceremony, if I could call so, of the school was there.
your voice is breaking. Sorry.
My voice is breaking. Is it clear now? Is it clear now? Do you hear me, Arun?
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Okay. So, uh, so the so so that's, I think I was also not very acquainted with the idea of Kuku by then. So it should be a couple of times that I've gone before. Maybe that's my fourth or fifth visit to Kuku uh, at that time. So Sivarajana was kind of addressing the gathering in. I clearly remember it was in front of the dome that Varun had built with the volunteers. Mm. So he gives a hammer to a small kid over there, and then he says, "No, go break the wall." And that's the beginning of Kuku. No, he says Kuku is not a permanent idea and surely it does not belong to the land or the people over here. And the earth that was built with should obviously go back into earth someday. And that was the idea of why it was built with earth to be without any identity of sorts. So to me, that was one big uh, revelation about Cuckoo and the people that happened to me on that day. So that's something that kind of stays very, very strong in my memory till now. So, as a prayer and as a request, uh, we are also looking to start the next phase of construction activities in Kuku. So architect Varun also will surely be there, and he will be the architect, and we will be following a similar pattern or maybe a much more evolved pattern from our learnings from the previous time. So we sincerely pray that all the people who are in this conversation will be joining us with your hands on to build the next few buildings of Kuku in the coming months. Hopefully, after all this lockdown and everything goes down, we will soon begin work with Kuku. So, a very big thanks to all of you for attending the session from different countries. Um, and uh, and I don't think thanking Varun is too small a word to thank Varun for what he has shared, but for lack of a better word, thank you for sharing your experiences honestly, right out from your heart, without using any of the jargons or terms, and just being simple as you are with the language as well. So thank you so much. And as a request to all of you, I would request all of you to please write. Uh, all of you guys, whoever is listening to me, telling the same thing for all the session end, I'll keep repeating for all the session ends till you guys write. So I want all of you guys to write. I have been getting many messages from students, sir. எனக்கு எழுதவே தெரியாது sir. I have never written in my life. How can I write? Even though I want to write, I'm saying write. No, take a pen and a paper, sit, and then start writing right now. You will surely write. Even though it's 4 lines or 40 lines, it will be your writing, and that writing will surely make a huge difference and impact in somebody's life. It has made a lot of impact from the previous writing for those people who have written for the very first time. There are a lot of people who have seen their writing and have got to know about the mentors of the conversation. A lot of people who have got to know about Claude's work or Bindu Malini's or Bombay Jayashree's work. This is only because somebody wrote about it. That's the only way that you can share. And writing is also a permanent record in history. That such a conversation happened with so and so people on this date and this thing was shared. So please do write on your blog, social media, wherever you want. But please do write. And thank you all for joining once again. We will, somebody's question saying when will it be approximately the building in Kuku? We will keep you posted. Please do follow us on the Facebook page, facebook.com/Kuku Children, CUCKWOCHILDREN, Kuku Children, and you'll be updated very soon about the next phase of construction activities. Yeah, so thank you all for joining, and please do join us for the next sessions in the conversation. We'll be with Koothambakam Ilangovan, who has worked extensively in a small village and has become a pioneer in model housing for different classes of the society. So that will be happening soon. So thank you all for joining, and thanks once again, Varun, for this wonderful session.
Thank you so much for attending. Thank you for the opportunity.
Good day.
சூரையமுதே கண்ணம்மா தூய சுடர்வானொளியே சூரையமுதே கண்ணம்மா